Biden's presidency and the rapid decline in American standard of living, as $5 of pay now buys only $4.25 of goods and services. Yet Democrats in Congress and the Biden White House insist the economy is as healthy as ever. Not only has President Biden's inflation crisis harmed working families, but it has also endangered millions of seniors and those nearing retirement. Right now, 25% of Americans plan to delay their retirement, and 62% of women say they expect to retire later or don't believe they will ever be able to retire because of inflation. Every single day, roughly 10,000 baby boomers reach retirement age. Yet due to the president's cost of living crisis, 1 in 6 seniors are considering going back to work. The number one reason they cite is simply lack of money. Seniors who retired before President Biden took office haven't been spared either. Inflation has eroded retirement accounts for even the most diligent savers. For example, a retirement portfolio valued today at $250,000 would buy the same amount of goods as $137,100 in 2000. Make no mistake, the Democrats' reckless spending agenda caused this problem. And now their radical ESG agenda threatens what's left of seniors' retirement. Democrats are trying to enshrine so-called environmental, social, and governance ideology into America's financial system by removing protections for savers in the tax code. This political crusade threatens the $33 trillion Americans have saved for retirement. As a committee, we have responsibility to ensure that tax-advantaged retirement plans offer security to American seniors and future retirees. The tax code imposes strict requirements on every professional who manages tax-advantaged retirement plans in order to protect our seniors. The law states that state governments and the private sector must manage these accounts for the exclusive benefit of retirees. This standard has been in place for decades, and it predates rulemaking by the Department of Labor on fiduciary duties. Working families need that protection to prevent Wall Street money managers from putting climate alarmism and far-left policies ahead of their retirement security. But over the last couple of years, we've seen the ESG agenda turn into a pressure campaign that allows, in some cases, forces investment advisors to gamble with retirees' nest eggs. According to Bloomberg, investors have pulled back over $280 billion from ESG targeted stocks since August of last year, and for good reason. According to our staff analysis of the top 20 ESG investment funds, ESG funds performed 18 percentage points worse than the stock market as a whole during the past year. A report on ESG investing produced by the Committee to Unleash Prosperity cites a review published by Boston College in 2020 that found, quote, pension funds with an ESG orientation lag those of non-ESG funds by 2 basis points per year over a 10-year period. Requiring retirement plan managers to invest in ESG funds is reckless and a danger to the system. We have the responsibility to protect as members of the Ways and Means Committee. The Trump administration's Department of Labor issued rules prohibiting Wall Street managers from investing Americans' retirement savings in woke ESG special interest. The purpose of the rules was to remind retirement plan managers of their sole responsibility: protect and build retirement security. The Biden administration reversed course with a superseding rule that favors ESG activism, and then went as far as to veto a congressional resolution back in March that would have corrected this error. This committee has a duty to ensure that our tax rules support Americans' financial security. We have a responsibility to put the needs of seniors ahead of climate extremists and far-left activists who want to use retirement savings to finance a political agenda. I hope my colleagues on the other side of the aisle will do what's right and join us in protecting our seniors. I look forward to today's discussion, and I'm pleased to recognize the ranking member, Mr. Nill, for an opening statement.
We are tuned into the House hearing on ensuring that woke doesn't leave Americans broke, protecting seniors and savers from ESG activism. We just heard from the House Ways and Means Committee Chair, Jason Smith, a Republican from Missouri, talking about seniors and Americans who money is on the line and suffering in the face of inflation. He's saying that the Biden administration, since the Biden administration took office, the cost of goods has risen 17.7%. He says, $5 gets you what $4.25 would get you basically when Biden took office.
And a striking statistic you brought up as well was that 62% of women in the U.S. are expecting not to retire at all, or at least are planning to extend their retirement due to this this inflation, and not expecting to be able to have enough money if they don't. So
that's right.
So in this context, people's retirement funds are very precious, and prioritizing having enough money is becoming much more in the spotlight, and people are really feeling the consequences of it. And so partly this hearing is really about looking at whether fund managers are properly managing the funds of retirement funds to ensure that people do walk away with enough money to last them to the end of their days.
That's right. And Congressman Smith was also saying that, the Biden administration says the economy is healthy and doing better than ever. Despite
right.
The different inflation that we've been talking about. He's also saying that seniors and those nearing retirement are actually considering going back to work due to lack of money. He says that's the number one cause, lack of money.
That's true. It's sort of a nationwide phenomenon, not just for women, but it seemed more extreme to me, the idea of never retiring. That's only a few people face that traditionally, I assume. Now, we also heard from the congressman about, as you mentioned, the denial of this issue within the economy by the Biden administration, but also the laws that do already exist in terms of that fund managers really should be prioritizing the funds and the people who are investing in those funds. And he also talked about the history of that, where within the Trump administration they had prioritized that, and that Biden reversed that.
That's right. He's saying that these tax-advantaged retirement plans, like your IRAs, 401ks, the law states that the money managers in charge of those accounts must prioritize must benefit retirees, and that must be their priority. And already we're seeing those kinds of laws come into question here.
And so, Chris, just to begin and go back a few steps for our viewers, what is ESG?
Right, ESG.
That you look at some of these ESG funds, some of them contain companies like the China Coal Company that has higher ESG ratings than American companies that just own real estate.
How are Americans' long-term retirement savings affected by these ESG management fees, which only line the pockets of Wall Street?
Well, you can see just over the last 10 years, they've given up essentially. They could have had 11.5% return, but they've only had a 4.5% return. That's not keeping pace with inflation.
The House Ways and Means Committee probing ESG funds at a hearing earlier today. Republicans criticizing the fund managers for not maximizing returns. Managers had to aim for maximum profit in the past, but the Biden administration changed the rules in 2022. Now ESG factors can be prioritized. One witness said that after the rule was changed, most asset managers pulled their money out of American energy production investments. They're now investing in Chinese energy instead, which pollutes more than the U.S. The witness said that this also supports Iran and subsequently Hamas. We're at the 30-day mark.
American pension funds are being used to strengthen the Chinese Communist Party and Iran. NTD's Arian Postar has the highlights from today's hearing.
The goal of ESG is not better financial performance. It is to force compliance to one view.
The House Ways and Means Committee on Tuesday investigating retirement plans being invested into ESG funds. ESG stands for environmental, social, and governance. In the past, pension managers had to aim for maximum profit over everything else. However, in 2022, the Biden administration changed the rules, saying they may consider climate change and other environmental, social, and governance factors in selecting retirement investments. Numbers now show such investments do bring less returns.
They could have had 11.5% return, but they've only had a 4.5% return. That's not keeping pace with inflation.
This witness, Jason Isaac, former Texas state representative and director of Life Powered, says such investments do more damage besides hurting returns. Isaac says ESG funds directly play into the hands of the Chinese Communist Party, going as far as to call it the China ESG agenda. He says that as soon as rules changed in 2022, asset managers pulled their money out of American energy production, and they now use those same funds to instead invest in energy production in China. And Isaac explains the consequences of that. Take a look.
And we're seeing dollars flow into Iran from China to the tune of $50 to $80 billion because of the ESG agenda. And guess who's going to be buying the refined products that China is producing because they've expanded their refining capacity? The United States will be buying jet fuel, diesel, and home heating oil made from Iranian oil that is funding this war on terror.
Republican Congresswoman Claudia Tenney asked another one of the witnesses what people can do to counter the ESG trend.
Each of us as consumers need to have our voices heard when we see companies politicizing their business like we saw with Bud Light and Target, that we don't patronize those businesses.
Democrats at the hearing often criticized Republicans for what they called wasting time on a hearing about ESG. They said there are more important topics to be discussed right now, such as funding the government, for example. Arian Pastar, NTD News.
Representing 21 member economies will be in the city of San Francisco. What are the highlights other than heightened security, massive road closures, and protests?
I think it's particularly significant this year because with the tension between the United States and China, the opportunity to have President Xi meet with President Biden is a very important one.
The White House announced last week that U.S. President Biden will meet with the Chinese leader Xi Jinping, making the first time the two leaders will speak in person since a year ago.
Chairman Xi is facing a lot of pressure of a downturn economy in China. He wants American business to go to China to make more investment, and he also wants Americans to buy more products from China. So that's why he's coming.
Both sides have been showing signs of easing up the tensions.
As I've said since the beginning of my administration, we seek competition.
I hope they don't talk to each other unless it's on camera.
Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen is also scheduled to host Chinese Vice Premier He Lifeng for 2 days for talks in San Francisco before the start of the APEC summit. This all comes on the heels of California Governor Newsom's recent week-long visit to China and meeting with the Chinese President Xi. The key discussions of this year's summit will center around trade, technology transfer, and economic development.
The United States is very concerned about technology transfer to China. The United States has been very aggressive in pushing restrictions on semiconductors, and that's been a very important issue for us because we're very concerned about the transfer of technology to China, potentially for defense purposes.
But others are skeptical of China's position in the economic sector.
More than 90% of Americans have negative opinions about China. So I don't think Xi is going to be very successful to attract a lot of investments to China.
While APEC is intended to be an economic forum, political topics do come up during discussions among world leaders, especially when international tensions run high with the current Russia-Ukraine war and conflicts in the Middle East. Meanwhile, San Francisco is aggressively clearing homeless encampments, increasing drug-related arrests to improve the city's image as delegations arrive.
You see, Joe Biden is doing everything he can to help China make a bunch of money. And in the process, he's hurting Americans. What is up with this guy? He has got to be... He's in China's pocket as it is. He belongs to them. So he's going to do what they want.